everyone.
Hi.
Hey.
Okay.
This is fun.
So I had originally intended to start with the opening of the very first episode of Mr. Robot, which begins with a black screen. And actually, you know what? Let's watch it together.
Okay.
Let's watch it together, and we're all going to get into Mr. Robot zone, which is a wonderful but also maybe not a reassuring place to be at all times. So let's go ahead and take a look at that.
It's hit the fan since then.
So I started with this because you all may remember this, but before Mr. Robot came out, there were posters everywhere saying, "Who is Mr. Robot?"
Yes.
And they had a picture of your face, right? And I said, "Who is Mr. Robot?" And the opening of this show, I go, "Is that Mr. Robot? Oh, that's not Mr. Robot." Well, sort of, yes, sort of now. But I wanted to ask you, first of all, when you shot the scene, where was this scene in the production order of the show? Was it the first scene you shot?
No, not at all. It was, I think it was about midway, I am Mike, I can hear. I was about midway through our pilot. We shoot every episode in about 7 to 8 days. As the first season did well, we got an extra day, so now 8 days. But I believe we had about two and a half weeks to shoot this pilot, and everything was going pretty swimmingly up until this day.
This particular day?
This particular day was the hardest day I had shooting the pilot.
What was wrong?
It was, it's a very complicated scene because the essence of it is you're getting to know him, you know, on so many different levels. I mean, you're getting to know him as a socially anxious person. You're getting to know him as, you know, someone who is attempting to be heroic in a certain way, go outside of himself and step away from the monitor, if you will, and you know, interact in this way. Seeing a confidence in him that was a very tricky thing to play between, you know, my conversation with Sam Esmail and Nils Arden Oplev, the director, is, you know, we really had to modulate how much confidence a guy like this has.
That was a very important aspect of this that I wanted to ask you about, because he is, the first time I see this guy, I'm trying to travel back on the magic time machine before I knew what the show was. I'm just going, I literally popped the disc in, and it's like, it's called Mr. Robot. I wonder what it's about.
Right.
And your character shows up, and like, I think I remember that guy from the poster. I don't know anything about the show.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, this is a random demented person who's approaching this other person in the restaurant. Like the way you come at him is so, it's like a billiard ball has landed in a particular pocket. But then the more you talk, then you kind of turn to this almost like this badass, like, vigilante character, but then towards the end you're getting confessional, and it's like this is a roller coaster of a scene, this 7-minute scene.
Yeah, it was very much, and it's longer than that. I mean, this was a good 14 minutes at one point.
Really?
Yeah, there's double the dialogue in there, which yeah, we figured out how to modulate that as well, but it's tricky because you have a guy like this, and I didn't want it to be this. The concept, the idea I had in my head a lot was, when you think about someone like this, was Nicolas Cage in Spike Jonze Adaptation, where he's sweating in the elevator, and he's talking about being bald and this and that, you know, all that. He had that same kind of VO that Elliot has, and I said, you can't make it that, because no one's going to want to watch that as a series. It's unapproachable in a way. And I'm sure people would say the same about Elliot now. But I just wanted to give him a sense of gravitas that would make this a believable situation, that there is a steely side of him inside that could come in here and sit down in front of a stranger and present them with this evidence, but at the same time know what it's like to be on the outskirts of society and be able to relate, and make him just as multifaceted as he could be. And myself as an actor, I knew this was the scene to do it. So I was getting a lot of direction from Sam in one sense about how he saw it, and Nils on how he saw it, but ultimately this was one of those moments where I really had to stick with my gut and go with my version, which was, you know, someone who you could relate to, someone who you felt possessed that character that we all have deep down inside when, you know, our back is against the wall, and someone who does have some compassion for the other side, no matter what their situation is. It's someone who could relate, but in the end had to do what they felt was the just thing, and expressing kind of, you know, the loss of a father and the social anxiety all in this one scene is not, it's not an easy thing to do, to wrap this all in you know, one coffee shop scene. So.
Yes, yes. Well, and in terms of just the choices that you're making here, the physical part of it, what are you doing differently in the scenes where Elliot is confident and steely, and the scenes where he is, maybe even without even meaning to, being vulnerable? You know, is there something that happened? Do you even think about, like, I'm going to do this with my posture, I'm going to do this with the way I look at people? It
happens in the work that I do beforehand to kind of understand the human being, and as far as I know them. The best thing is when it just lives in my body, and in the moment, you know, when I decide to sit back in my chair is a moment of confidence, is a moment of ownership, looking at that. You know, there's moments where you can relate so much by sitting back and not making the eye contact, and you know, laying down the law essentially by sitting back. There's a real confidence in that, and pulling your eyes up when you need to do that. Or there is, you know, for someone who has physical boundaries like Elliot does, when he does come in and say, I'm very different too, and you know,
yes,
that is a very vulnerable place to be in, when, you know, he doesn't quite know how to share that, and it manifests itself in him saying, I don't jerk off to little kids, but, and he's just so unaware of what he said. It's coming out in his own way, and that's when the physicality kind of takes on its own thing. I mean, there's a take where I tried it where I'm like, you know, I don't jerk off to little kids, but there's something about thinking about it, not looking in someone's eyes, you know, actually taking that in as if it was a natural, you know, it's just the way that it is. A plus B equals this, you know, so no, I don't jerk off to little kids, but I understand this. And so there are things that will inherently just happen in the moment. But on that specific day, I had direction from Sam and Nils and my own thing of what I wanted to do. So that's probably, you can probably go back and cut that scene any way you want. But for me, it was a pretty formidable experience. I remember going home and redoing the lines over and over in my head, and that's when I feel like I haven't done something well. So that one took me a while to get over. I never thought it was going to be a well-executed scene. And then to the point where I went to Sam and I said, we need to reshoot Ron's Coffee. And yeah, believe it or not, and we actually.
What's the story with this?
I just thought because of all the duress that we were under that day, that me as an actor, I never thought I quite nailed it. So I would push him on it and push him on it, and there was a part of him that felt honestly that he didn't get certain things out of it that he wanted to, but once everybody saw it, we felt like idiots because people kind of fell in love with this scene. So.
Right. Now he says, I want to kind of zoom out a little bit here. I know what it's like to be different.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about this backstage. This is a role, like as I wrote in a piece specifically about your performance, among other things, like I think it's a technical marvel, and that's what we're here mainly to discuss, but it's also, I think it's a significant performance because people feel represented by you. They feel, and a lot of different kinds of people feel represented. They feel like you speak for them, and I mentioned, like, my first thought, I think it was the beginning of season 2, I was reminded of, in Saturday Night Fever, John Travolta has a poster of Al Pacino up on his wall. There's people who have pictures of you on their wall for the same reason that Travolta did for Pacino. How do you feel about that? What do you think about that?
It's a very, very powerful place to be because I've gravitated to work that actually, you know, speaks to the masses in the way that it is motivating or gives people a voice or says something about, you know, the past, or, you know, in pieces that I've done that have been about war or about, you know, I gravitate to people's mental state. But here's a guy who has, and I've always looked at him as someone under such duress, someone dealing with such grief and trauma and being lonely and feeling like he's such an outsider, and still has that kind of perseverance to get out and approach people and try to make a change. And it ends up sometimes falling, you know, flat and has terrible repercussions, but he does muster and conjure this kind of superhuman strength that what I think people really relate to is that they see that in themselves as well, that deep down inside all of us there is a person like this who has that kind of dynamic of wanting to change not only who they are at their core and find some home for themselves, but ultimately seek justice for you know, the world around them. And this is not someone who has superhuman, well, he does have a very, very special ability, but it's not coming from a place of, you know, the comic book world.
Right, he wasn't bitten by a spider.
He wasn't bitten by a spider, no.
Yeah.
A virus, maybe.
Yeah. Nice.
No. But yeah, I mean, he's someone who you look at and he's a hero for our time. He's not someone you would look at and say that is the traditional hero you would see on screen. But I identified him, and for some reason when I was playing that role, there were some things that I thought were out of the, oh, he couldn't do this or he wouldn't do this. And the further I got into it, I realized he's capable of anything because he's a human and he has talents, and because he cares so deeply about certain things that he wants to change, he can go to the greatest lengths to achieve them.
Right.
And for that reason, he has such a strong voice. And also, I don't think he looks like the typical person that you see on TV for the past 15, 20 years in a lead role. And I mean, he has all these inherent, you know, flaws of being socially anxious and alone in the world, and still striving to do heroic things. I mean, he's an unconventional hero in a very unconventional time.
When you are playing Elliot in different modes, you have different kinds of, there's different kinds of Elliot. There's different kinds of Elliot. Like there's different Elliot, you know, he has a lot of different sort of faces, a lot of different kind of, people know him as the guy in the office. Yeah. And then here's the underground revolutionary. Right. And then probably his, you know, landlord or landlady knows him as someone else. Do you have particular choices that you make when you're, depending on the situation? Like, do you ever ask yourself, which Elliot are they seeing? Or is that something that's left up to the filmmaking, the music, and things like that?
No, I try to be in charge of all those things. And Sam and I talk at length, beyond ad nauseum, about this character and the story and where we're going. So I'm very aware of which Elliot I'm playing in every moment. There's an Elliot who can say, you know, the most blunt things to Darlene, you know, or can say the most blunt things to anybody, but is kind of blind to what he's saying in a sense. But there are things that I find mesmerizing about him, is that he can be in a scene with, you know, the drug dealer Fernando Vera, and have so much balls, for lack of a better word, but gravitas in that moment, and yet he can be in the office and be quite sheepish in front, you know, in the most mundane situation. So it just mesmerizes me. There are moments for all of us when we find ourselves in these predicaments where it's like, why am I sweating in this situation that just doesn't call for this much stress?
Yeah.
But I can do something that at other times I'm like, you know, I'm pretty adventurous in this other moment as well that you would not expect yourself to be. So I always try to find those moments where making the unexpected choice be the most natural choice.
You do a thing, you mentioned the conversations with the drug dealer. Those are interesting scenes too, because even though, you know, as we said, Elliot has a steely side, he's not the irresistible force kind of confrontational. He's more of the immovable object.
Yeah.
You know, like he's sort of like, and there are times when I feel like in many of the dramas that I really enjoy, there's one character who seems to be aware that they're in a play. And that character is you in this. And there are times where I feel like when you're in a scene with somebody who is being an asshole, being threatening, trying to dominate the space, I look at Elliot and I feel like Elliot, it's like he's watching it on television, or like he's reading a book, like you're studying. You're studying them. What is happening in your head when you're playing a scene that way? Are you detaching from it in any way? Are you?
I'm learning from it. I think I'm doing what we all do in the moment, is studying the person in front of us. And in any conversation you have with any human being, you start to pick apart, you know, your opponent, and you can see when they get aggressive, what the flaw is behind it, or when they get quiet, when someone gets quiet in front of you, why that might be the most dangerous moment. But someone who's just talking for the sake of talking, and you can identify someone's philosophy. So why wouldn't he just sit back and take it all in and then, you know, find the chinks in the armor, if it were. And here's a guy in Elliot, the saving grace of the thing that I always find, you know, to back up the reason of why he doesn't run off and just escape a situation, is because there is a sense of ambivalence in him in those moments that, I guess, seeing someone who has the same kind of trauma that resides in him makes that person just as human and less of an adversary, but more of a connection.
Yes.
There's something that he can almost connect to with the good and the bad, and that's what makes him, and all of his flaws, is something that is represented in everyone he interacts with on the show.
Right.
Which makes, you know, for I think another reason as to why we all can invest in this character so much is because there's a part of him that accepts his flaws, or is at least trying to work them out in a certain way, but not necessarily shoving everything away to the degree that he could be.
Right. Right. So the next clip that I want to show, it's actually really two little short scenes. They're butted up together, but they're so different. The tone of them is so different, and I want to talk to you about each of them individually. And so we could show the next clip. This is one of my very favorite.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we'll take the first part first. Christian Slater.
Yeah.
The casting of Christian Slater in this is interesting to me, because you're kind of playing a character that Christian Slater would have played back in the day, you know. And you've got Christian Slater who's representing. He's your dad, but he's not your dad. He's your. What is he in your mind? You know?
That's a very complex question.
When you're talking and he's sitting in the bar, right. Who is he talking to?
Who is he Well, he's talking to someone who, you know, can help him articulate something that's deep inside of him. You know, this kind of head of this, you know, an anarchist in this certain way, who wants to do the exact same things that Elliot deep inside wants to do. Just has a very very different approach to how he's gonna facilitate all of that. But right. Yeah, he kind of, you know, he's talking to the person who can muster up the courage in him to do what he wants to do, and represents that kind of paternal quality. Mm-hmm. It's like that guy that you hang out with that you wish was your dad, in a certain way, and you find yourself going to get drinks with them, and I'm sure your dad at some point gets jealous of the time you're spending with this guy. It's like the cool stepdad kind of thing.
Right.
But I mean, and there's like the love-hate relationship, but ultimately there's this quality that Christian brings to it that no matter what he's saying, you want to hang out with that guy. He tells you to drink an appletini, and you're probably going to drink an appletini.
I like the way you say appletini.
How did I say
You
it?
like, it's like you're almost coughing it out.
Yeah.
It's like appletini.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I read that scene, I was like, are you kidding, Sam? We're going to be drinking appletini? And I said, the only way I'm going to do this is if I throw it back. And he's like, fine, throw it back, and then it'll be funny. And what that reminds me of is, one, all of the things, terrible things I've had to ingest in this show. What do I have? That, the copious amounts of white powder that have gone through my nose. Pills. I feel like I throw back pills. I mean, take after take after take. I was smoking a lot more in the first season, so in New York you can't smoke regular cigarettes on stage, so there's this herbal concoction that they come up with that is just atrocious. The smell of it makes me want to vomit. But yeah, I mean, having Christian there was I had read with a few guys prior to that, and I just kept saying no, you got this is
essentially, because I can't imagine anybody in this role now.
No, I can't.
In fact, it seems like he wrote the part for Christian Slater, and luckily he got him or something. I just can't imagine it.
When Sam saw Christian do it, it was the first day we did the scene on the subway, and I had read the scene quite a bit with some, notable actors as well. But Christian comes in there. No one's heard it because you offer Christian Slater the role for this, and so he's doing it for the first time, and no one knows what to expect. But he did his scene, and I was, withholding a smile, and I ran up to Sam, and I go, "It's the best version of that speech I've ever fucking heard." So I was like, thank God. And that was a pretty great moment. And you got a lot from Christian. Was like, yeah, how was it? And he got up and he's like, all right, I'll see you in a month or whatever it was. But yeah, there is an element of hanging out with one of the cooler guys on the planet that happens in those scenes.
Well, that comes through in that scene too, and it's and I had this very complicated question prepared for you about what are you seeing when you are playing a scene with Christian Slater, but I would imagine just holy shit, that's Christian Slater. There's got to be an aspect of that, no matter how deep you are in the part, because you're sitting in a bar with Christian Slater.
For the first time, the first time I met him and we were rehearsing a scene on the Ferris wheel, and he had just got this scene a few days before. He was hired just like a few days before we could finally get him, and his deal got done. We were like, thank God. And we did rehearse it, and there was a few moments of holy shit. The guy can say anything and it fucking sounds good. But then when you get beyond that, you realize he's done he's a consummate professional and done all the work, and we end up digging into this relationship and have created for ourselves a really, really, deep connection between these two characters and why they have come to be in each other's lives. And the fight and conflict still continues into this third season, but in a very evolved way. So it's really special now seeing that and seeing how far we come with it, and having worked on some of the scenes in this third season where you just see how developed this relationship has become, and that's a tribute to Christian and of course Sam for writing this and having such a specific through line on who those two men end up being and how they influence each other's lives.
Well, we talked about different modes for your performance, but he actually has different modes too. Because when he's playing a scene like that scene, or when he's talking, when Elliot is in conversation with his dad. Like, I almost feel like it's like when Gollum is talking to Gollum.
Right.
You know, like one of those kind of thing. It's like the manifestation of his issues to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that that guy is his dad, but it says your dad. He's talking about Elliot's dad in the third person.
Right.
That's interesting.
It is. I didn't catch that until now, but I realized this is pre-episode 10, where I don't think we won't necessarily.
I think we're in a room where you're not going to be spoiling.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously this is before Elliot knows what the hell's going on. In fact, the bartender at some point kept looking in between and to the two of us, and I had to keep. This was constantly something we had to do in the first season. Is I would go up to actors or Christian, and Christian would be like, "Listen, don't look at me." And I mean,
it's like, what a prima donna.
Yeah, what a prima donna. You'd be like, yeah, damn, Christian Slater's a prick. We just had to keep, keep this mask alive.
So nobody's ever looking at Christian Slater when he's in a scene?
I don't think I don't think.
Because I've seen, I think every episode of this probably at least twice, and I've
after the reveal, I think maybe, but prior to that, I don't think there is a lot of direct eye contact. But maybe Sam went and cleaned up some edits and had, just so people wouldn't give anything, it wouldn't be given away. But
right.
I don't know. Was the bartender making eye contact with both of us or no?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
well, there you go. So when he's playing, but when we're seeing him play your dad in flashbacks, he's not acting that way.
No.
He's a much softer, quieter, a weaker kind of troubled character.
He very much is, and it's, Christian comes from this place of, he's now a father as well, and a very, very loving, devoted, dedicated father, so he really relishes playing that side of Mr. Robot. Mm-hmm. And Sam talked to me about what that, the father was like for you in the past. So to see this version is this kind of demonized version of him is something that is easy to rebel and retaliate against, knowing that previous to that, prior to, in the childhood, there was this, loving existence as a family, for the most part, with a father who was very compassionate, in a sense, who was still not a typical father, I would say,
right, yeah.
but had more of a natural, normal upbringing than post him having cancer and dying and all the events that come with having that happen. But
the second part of that clip, I cannot fail to laugh at that sequence where it's like now it's a comedy. Now it's a very dry, kind of verging on kooky comedy, and there's a lightness to you. There's a spring in your step.
Right.
And talk about how it feels to play that versus the brooding, dark, tortured kind of thing. It must feel like a release to be able to play something like that, right?
It is. I mean, when I first read it, I said, "What are you doing? This is that. You can't do that." I mean, that's like jumping the shark, essentially. You can't take this character and immediately in the third episode throw him in a universe that is the opposite of the way he's been living his life. But essentially, we realized, there has to be a levity to this story. Otherwise, you're sitting there and it's an anxiety attack for an hour.
Yeah. Which is actually a mode in television. There are a lot of shows where it is basically like, I don't know why I watch this. It just makes me feel like shit all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, Breaking Bad, you can't get away from. But there's an hour of sleep I felt like I lost, or 2 hours just watching that before bed. But it's addictive because it's so good. And there is great comedy in that, and that's what I think we found some places, like in that scene with the Appletini, that was still funny, and to have this scene follow, which even had more of a montage feel but got lost a little bit in editing, was something that was hilarious to play. I remember, to slow down the camera, you go from 24 frames to 48 frames, and it's a sunny day, and I'm holding a Starbucks cup, and I'm just thinking, how is this happening right now? Is this really gonna work? And at one point we went into Starbucks. You know how they put everybody's name on your cup? Instead of Elliot, they had misspelled it idiot. And that was on purpose. We wanted to feature that, but Starbucks was like, no, you can use the green straw and you can use everything, but you can't do that. I'm like, why? Because they know they're notorious for misspelling. But it's fun. I mean, it's so much fun to bring that levity to it, and then have something so devastating, like throw it right back into the world that it actually exists in. Where how long can Elliot last liking things on Facebook and watching Spider-Man with his girlfriend of 24 hours?
Well, another reason why I showed that particular clip is this is a great moment in voiceover, and this is a very voiceover-driven show. Voiceover is very important, more so on this show than even a lot of shows that use voiceover. And when you are doing the voiceover, I'm curious about the relationship between the voiceover and your performance when it's on the set. Is the voiceover part of the script when you get it? Or is it written later? If you know that voiceover is going to be part of a scene, we got two people talking in a room.
Right.
It's like Elliot says this other character says this, and then we cut to Elliot going like she's lying.
Right.
But do you mentally leave space in the scene for, and then they're going to add me saying she's lying? Or do you not trouble yourself with that?
No. When we got the pilot, I was so concerned about the voiceover. I'd never seen so much voiceover, and I just memorized it all so I could time it out. And I didn't know how we were going to do it, if we were going to pre-record my voice. And it came time to do one of the scenes, and they have an earbud, basically, and someone was going to talk into my ear and deliver that. Yeah. And Sam Esmail, our writer-director, was the person who thought, he's the perfect person to do it. He wrote it. He could be the voice in between takes. And we had discussed this character so much that I already had his voice in my head, and to physically, literally hear him giving me that VO was so jarring that probably would have been useful in a way, but in that moment, I remember breaking the fourth wall on purpose and looking right down the barrel of the camera and just going, it's not gonna work. And at that point, I took out the earpiece and I had it timed out in my head, so I could actually think about it and then have that, take that moment of being subtext and play the exact opposite in the actual scene. And it's a great tool to have as an actor, because we're constantly playing against our subtext and the things we're really feeling and we're hiding, and so it's so nice to say something in this kind of monotone, drab way that is the realest thing you could possibly say, and then lift your pitch a little bit and say the exact opposite at times.
It's very fine, detailed work, this voiceover, because it's not a buoyant, expressive, full of life kind of voiceover. Like, you're dealing in millimeters here a lot of the time.
I put as much work into that voiceover as I do into any of the performances, because it is essentially its own character, and it really does lack a certain inflection, and there is a grittiness to that, to the way it comes through, but it sounds, to me, I want it to sound like that voice that speaks to you, that you really question if anybody's hearing or not, and is constantly running alongside your outside voice, or the things that, there are those moments where it's like, did I really say that out loud? Did anybody hear that?
Yes.
And that's kind of something you want to convey, and Sam and I worked to a large degree after seeing the pilot over and over to find out exactly what the tone of that would be. And
when you're doing the voiceover, are you looking at a cut scene, or are you simply recording the voiceover?
I used to look at cut scenes, and then I started to remember. I just knew what I was playing in that moment, I kind of can be encyclopedic about where I was in that moment and what was happening and the way I wanted to play it, and the work that the work that goes into it beforehand, reading the voiceover, almost informs sometimes how I'm playing the scene. So.
Oh, because you're thinking about I've got this half of the performance, the one where I'm in the room.
Exactly.
And then it will be finished later with this voiceover.
Exactly.
So you're keeping that in your mind.
Of course, have to. And so there are times the times when I really find that I'm modulating the voiceover the most is when something very erratic is happening, or a moment like this where you can actually lift words, like I might actually like things on Facebook, and whereas other times it would be a more subtle, more subdued, if that's believable enough. But
it's so interesting that he originally was going to be reading that voiceover through the earpiece. I've heard a lot of different ways that voiceover is integrated with a performance in a scene.
Yeah.
And one of the funniest ones I heard was Wes Anderson on the set of Grand Budapest Hotel. This is a guy who never shoots an extra frame of film if he doesn't think he's going to need it. So everything was timed down to the second. And he was actually standing on the set reading the voiceover.
Right.
Reading the voiceover. And Ray Fiennes is there, he's like doing a scene, and then Wes Anderson is standing off to the side going, the hotel had been in existence since 1672 or whatever. Right. And then Anderson said, like, at a certain point, Ray Fiennes did almost what you did. He turned to him and he said, this isn't working, darling.
Right, yeah. This isn't working, darling.
Yeah. But you're not looking at, it's not like when you're scoring a movie. A lot of times when you do voiceover, you're looking at the scene, everything's there except the voiceover, and you're just, this goes here and this goes there. You're not doing that.
No, we tried it, and then I finally said the editor will have to work around my voiceover because it is so specific the way it is delivered that what will be the actual aspect that changes is the physical performance, and that's what you'd have to modulate. That's what you'd have to edit in order to fit the voiceover, not the other way around.
Right. So I want to show the next one. This is a great physical performance with a lot of different things going on in it. Let's show the third clip.
All right.
Obviously, it's not like you shot it in 4 minutes or anything, but the tempo of your acting, you've got a very wary reaction-driven sort of performance where you're taking it in, like we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that Elliot doesn't seem scared of this guy. He doesn't seem physically scared of this guy, but he seems to be aware of him as a threat, and he's thinking, like, maybe what kind of threat is he? How am I going to deal with this threat? It seems like it's a problem-driven way that he's looking at it.
Well, he's looking at him like this guy is definitely threatening, but he also delivers me the drug I need to survive.
Right,
so
right.
There is what I love about him is he's calculating these moments, and it doesn't happen in a necessarily neurotic state of mind. I mean, he's constantly taking in, this guy is going to be a problem for me, and it's also going to be a problem that he's not going to be around to deliver these pills that Shayla gets from me.
Right.
So I'm kind of weighing the circumstance as to, I think in that moment, how much of a threat is he going to be, and ultimately when will the kind of day come where I have to physically remove one or the other from my life.
When you're on the keyboard, and I turned to you as we were watching the clip because I'd never noticed this before. When you're on the keyboard, the voiceover, which is often very steady, it's very, like the rhythm of it is very steady and very measured on the show. Here, there's little bursts of words, long silence, and then there's a stretch where you're like, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And it almost seems to foreshadow the way the scene is cut later when you're destroying everything. That's maybe some of the fastest editing on the entire show where everything is being destroyed.
It is. Those cuts are probably the jump cutting throughout a scene like that. It's also the most fun. I mean, it is so much fun to take a drill into all of that, all of that stuff that I hate so much, like disk drives and all of all these backup hard drives, and then throw everything in the microwave. Literally throw them in the microwave and get to watch them explode.
So this is not like a fake microwave that sets shit on fire. You're actually microwaving things you shouldn't microwave?
No, yeah, microwaving things I shouldn't microwave all the time. And it's like, the first few takes, I'm just like watching it and saying like, don't watch it, you do this a million times. But the thing's about to explode, right? I could not watch it, so. It was probably like 4 takes before I learned my lesson.
How long did it take to shoot the whole destruction portion of that scene we just watched?
Honestly, we were fighting for time that day, and that's when I kick into high gear, is those pressure situations where it's like, the camera's following me every moment. It's going from here, you're gonna rip this out, take this one gets put down on the desk, the drill is here, pick up the drill. You know, you're going to drill into this in these 2 places, and it all doesn't show up necessarily, but that's all one massive sequence of probably, 8 to 10 different motions of things that have to happen at a rapid pace, because ultimately he doesn't know if he's going to cut it like that. There are sometimes when it plays well in a wide because I'm moving so fast. Right. Watching everything in a wide is also cool. So,
did you have multiple versions of the things you destroyed?
Oh, we always do. And I always ask ahead of time, how many do we have? Just, you never know. I mean, you don't want to run out of those things. But yeah, it's always, those things are always fun for me. Those things are always fun, those situations, because you really do get an insight into how paranoid this guy is. I mean, I even bought my own microwave to destroy these things.
Really?
Yeah, something.
Wow.
I burn my scripts now.
That's probably part of the NDA that you signed.
I'm so worried about leaving sides or scripts anywhere around that, they all are watermarked. I shouldn't even put this out there.
don't repeat that. Okay, so the last one we're going to show is, this is one, I like this one because I feel like here's where we put it all together.
R.I.P. Shayla, by the way. I saw her at Sam Got Married a few days ago, and I did not know she was coming. Sam got married to Emmy Rossum, a little bit of gossip. But she was at the wedding, and I was not expecting to see her, and every time I see her, it's like a ghost has risen. I have met once, very sad, but happy to see her.
So okay, so let's watch. Got everything Mr. Robot is known for. We got the off-center compositions. We've got cool music played loud. Mm-hmm. We've got a montage that fits together like a. And more music to help us out.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. And you've got the montage. All the pieces fit together like it's a stained glass window pane in a church. Like all of that stuff is put together very meticulously.
Oh yeah.
What is the place of the actor in that? Like, aren't there points in that montage where, like, can you keep the totality of a sequence like that in your mind, or is there a point where it's like, lie in bed and look up at the camera?
One, I have to give credit to Sam Esmail and Todd Campbell for the composition of that. I mean, they're very meticulous about their framing. I mean, at one point I was craning my head to look this way, and as the conversation.
That's the Mr. Robot shot now.
Right. It really kind of destroyed me in a mental and physical place because it was so demanding. Every day I was on set and doing, some very tasking things. So there were a few, there were a few breakdowns I had that were. I was hoping could get caught on camera, probably, but happened silently in my own personal space. But I love it. I mean, I love that I, have the ability to envelop myself in this person's unique life, and that ultimately it has reached so many people and been so powerful that for any exhaustion that I've had, I mean, it pales in comparison to the effect that this show has had on anyone who comes into contact with it. So,
but Elliot still stays with you.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't just turn him off and hang him in a closet,
No, like the jacket.
Yeah.
Just take off the Mr. Robot. It stays with me in the sense that I mean, it's gnarly because I've created memories for a lot of characters that I played that are as vivid as my own memories, sometimes more so. So when you ask me like what it was like for Elliot as a child with Mr. Robot, and you know, there is this world that I've created for myself that will never go away. I mean, I'll still think about sitting in a diner with my father and what that life was like in comparison to having an appletini at a bar with someone who doesn't exist. So these things are just as vivid to me as my own personal memories. So in a sense, you can't get rid of them, but I also do really, really love what I do, so it comes with the territory.
Okay, let's take another one. Way in the back, almost, yes, you, yes. Yeah.
How many black sweatshirts are there?
It's a great question.
It is a great question, and I'll tell you what, so this has been written about, because I know this because I've been asked about it quite a bit, but the fact that everyone laughed, I will tell the story. We at one point we were going through the design of this character. I remember early on, they had sketches of what Elliot was gonna look like, and had like blue jeans and like Converse tennis shoes and an orange backpack. And this was before we went and shot the pilot, and I said, oh, no, this is not the show I'm making. This can't be what we're doing. And I sat down, and that's when I asserted myself, just because out of sheer like depravity and fear that this was gonna happen, I just went, this can't be, there's no orange backpack. Everything has to look like if he puts his head down, he will disappear into the concrete. And that's the kind of vibe we went for. So a black hoodie was the best way to do that. And we started looking for the right black hoodie, and you know, went to all the shops that you find on Broadway for like 30 bucks or 40 bucks. But you know, our costume designer the first season, or on the pilot, was adamant about it being special. So Ralph Lauren had made like a deconstructed brand of theirs that looked like, you know, a homeless person would wear it, but it cost $500. So there was a $500 hoodie, but it had a waffle kind of interior. I don't know exactly what that is, but I remember Sam saying no waffle anything on it. So then they bought another $500 sweatshirt from Ralph Lauren and removed the cuffs and the inside of the hoodie for that. And at this point I was like, this is not the show we're making. Just fun. And I remember I had a black hoodie that I bought for $10 that I was like, he's never gonna go for it if he knows that it was, you know, bought from a thrift store or something, and there weren't any, we couldn't double it in any way because we would need more. But I just decided to prance around set, like our pre-production offices with it, until Sam noticed. And at one point, I did catch his eye, and they had been having the hoodie conversation. He goes, "Did you get that from wardrobe?" And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Your hoodie." And I said, "No, dude, I've had this for like 12 years. I mean, I take this thing everywhere I go." And he kind of just smiled at me and pretty much knew what I was doing. But we're gonna have to replicate that. So I wore it for the pilot, and then I brought it back, and it ended up being the inside of a jacket. It was basically the lining of a heavier coat, and they found the designer, and they asked for the specifications, and then made about 20 of them. But I'm still partial to that original.
Do you have that stored in a safe place?
They have it stored in a safe place. I'm not allowed to touch it anymore.
Yes, okay. Yes, up in front.
I'm really interested to know what sort of research you do into mental illness, because a lot of times mental illness is misrepresented in media content, and it's sort of used as like a cheap plot device.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of accuracy with Elliot's characterization, and even like some of the dynamics that he has with his therapist,
Right.
the sort of cat and mouse that they play, and he lies a lot, and that's very, like, it's really accurate. But I just wonder how much of that is coming from the writing, and how much is that you know, making sure that you know how to play a character that's suffering from certain conditions.
Are you in psychology? Or?
I was at Buster's Malhart screening, and I asked you a question about sleep deprivation.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 Front row.
Do you actually exist?
Yes.
Are you a manifestation of... Yes.
I'm very cognizant of the way that this gets kind of conveyed in entertainment, and sometimes it can be done in a way that's just not accurate. And I thought that if we're gonna, do everything to Sam's specifications technically, I always want to be as accurate as I can to something that is as important as mental illness and social anxiety and all the things that come with it. And I listened to a bunch of TED Talks. I read a few books with people suffering from mental disorders that I thought were applicable. And I never wanted to just go out and say what Elliot was going through, because I never wanted to ostracize anyone, but have it feel like this was something that anybody could be living with based on the trauma of their past. And to do that, I just wanted to investigate that trauma, and I did that through that reading all that stuff. And then I found a psychologist who is my barber's wife, and we kept talking to Jennifer, and I kept talking to Jennifer and bringing my thoughts to Sam, and Sam realized I was being more eloquent in the field than I normally am, and he was like, "Where are you getting this information?" And I said, "I'm working with a psychologist, and she's really on point, and she has told me where other shows and films have gone wrong, and where it's been almost a disservice, and so she wanted to lend a hand." And so we kept talking to the point where Sam and the producers ended up bringing her on the show, and
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it is fantastic.
Did you get a break on your haircuts?
I did for a while, but not anymore. Once the show started doing well, they're like, he can afford it.
Great. So
she should actually be tipping more.
So we are out of time.
Oh,
we are out of time. But
one more question.
One more question. Oh, all right. Let's go.
Quick question.
Let's go to the middle right there. Yes. Yes.
Oh, hi. Okay, so what do you think of the impacts that being a person of color and portraying someone who deals with mental stability and instability has had on like the viewers of the show and just TV in general, I guess? Also, before you answer the question, this might be weird, you don't have to, but it's my 18th birthday today.
Okay, wow.
I just wanted a hug.
Sure. Afterwards.
Maybe later.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny, in working this for so many years, I was like, casting directors would say he's not ethnic enough, or he just looks like he looks like someone who could be ethnic, but is more of a just didn't look ethnic enough. And now that I'm on this show, and the way my name is pronounced lends towards someone who is somehow more ethnic than I've ever been. But I just think, I have to say, I have to thank USA and the network and everyone, who could have easily said this is too risky to put a guy named Rami Malek in the lead of our show about, a protagonist who is socially anxious and has a mental disease, who's plotting to take down the economic financial system. So, I will say the times are changing. How about that?
Definitely.
You'll get your hug outside.
All right. Okay, so before we wrap up, one little thing I want to say is USA Network, which helped put this event together, they're premiering a new show called The Center, which is immediately after this. And anybody who wants to go to that, see our friend with the clipboard over here, who will you can just go see it. You can just go see it. You can get a comp for it, but you have to act fast because you don't have that many seats.
That's really good.
So, so just go to the guest table. I'm sorry for a complimentary ticket. So thank you for doing this.
I have to thank you for writing, on all of these shows and watching all of our shows, and I I got to say, being as articulate as you are and investing so much of your time to bring the nuances of our show to many people, it obviously is a show that affects people and changes a lot of lives, and you know, we can only do so much for people to sit down and watch it and become a part of it, but the ability you have to bring a broader audience to it has been very helpful, so thank you.
Well, that's
very much.
very nice. That's very nice. Well, I'll say the same to you, and as I told you when you came in here, I think that the work you're doing on the show is not just technically impressive, but I think it's important. And I think we've heard a little bit from the audience tonight about that. It's like, this is a character, and this is a performance that speaks to people.
Yeah.
It speaks to people, and that's a very rare thing.
It is.
It's a very rare thing.
Thank you. Thanks.
And I expect to see that hoodie in the Smithsonian one of these days.
Yeah.
I hope so. Someone might lose it first.
So thank you very much.